How we doing today, everybody? So my page has been stagnant for quite a while, and I recently got monetized, so I figured it was a good opportunity to get back into this. So here we're doing a auger bearing on a Toro Power Max. You just saw me remove two bolts there. Those are 5/16 or 8 mm. These ones right here are 10 mm. Just taking the cables off. On the top you can see I accidentally left the cable on there. We're going to watch me fight with it in a minute. You just tuck this down behind the tire. Get it out of the way. These bolts over the shroud are all 8 mm or 5/16. There's 3 on the top and then 1 on the side on the little shroud. Just yank that cover off. It's in there kind of awkwardly, but just pull it. I've never broken one, ever. Never happened. They have some flex to them. Same thing, just pull that cover off. I'm off finding my impact and socket right now. About to do these 3 bolts on the side that hold the bucket to the body. On some models they have bigger tires. If you got like one of the more expensive ones or the newer ones have bigger tires. In which case it might be easier for a homeowner to just put it on a block and remove the tires to get these out. You only have to remove the top and bottom ones. The center one is slotted in the bucket to help you guide it back together. So just loosen those on each side. And these are 1/2 inch or 13 mm, by the way. I actually made a wrench to do these with the bigger tires without taking the tires off, and I just took a ratcheting 1/2 inch wrench and welded it to another 1/2 inch wrench so it's long enough to get down inside the tire. This is the part where I fight with the cable I forgot to take off. It looks like I'm pulling harder than I am. Fighting with it. I must have had a case of the dumb that day. Looking right over it. Ah, found the problem. For me fighting with it, that rod got jammed in the top. Usually if you're not an idiot like I am and you don't do that, these will just slide right apart. And you'll notice that trash can right there that caught the main body of the blower. That's on purpose. I always have like a trash can or something to lean it on, because if you lay it down, gas will leak out of the carburetor and it stinks. I'm kind of off frame here, but you can see that there was a lot of play on that pulley, and that's the main thing you want to look out for with an auger bearing. They're really common to fail. It's just like a bronze sleeve on a steel shaft, and they wear out over time. This is a very common repair. I see my brother walk by. Check out Wicked Bear Creations on Instagram. So here there's 2 set screws on that shaft, and what I'm doing here is I'm taking they're 3/8, so I'm taking a 3/8 extension and putting the square side on the screw and a 3/8 wrench on the side you attach your socket to, and just breaking these free. In a lot of these repairs, this can be the hardest part, is getting this pulley off. I've got it down to a science because I've done so many of these, so I kind of make it look easy. But we'll go over that in just a second. I think I'm probably grabbing the bar right now. Oh yeah, there she is, the trusty old pry bar. So there's a lip underneath this pulley, and under that lip is a washer, and then there's your auger bearing. You want to get the pry bar in between the washer and the lip on the pulley. This punch I'm using is aluminum, and I'm just sitting on the pry bar applying pressure. If you use a steel punch, you can mushroom the end of the shaft. I mean, it will work if it's not on there too bad, but I just prefer an aluminum one. So at this point, you need to remove a keyway that's in the shaft and a hardened steel washer that's in between the shaft. So right here, I just take a pair of cutters, I grip it, and pry it out. And slide the washer right off. If your auger bearing's real bad, that washer will be gone, and it should be replaced, or the second one will wear out just a lot faster than the first one. So the 3 bolts that hold this flange in, they're all carriage bolts in square holes in the body and lock nuts on top, so they can be a little tricky. But these are all 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. I'm just taking my sweet time here, gathering up my tools, getting ready to go. So here I just use a scrunch and I apply pressure under the flange. That one came right out. That one loosened, and that one loosened. Oh, second one came right out. Never mind. So see here, I just pry up under the flange and apply pressure. I'm using a scrunch. You can use any flathead, pry bar, anything that'll fit under there. That's what's left of the bronze collar is what I just pulled out there. So the auger bearing kit comes with these flanges, so you don't need to save them unless you bought just the bearing, and then you can reuse them unless they're mangled. The actual auger bearing kit, if I remember right, if I get this part number wrong, don't hate me for it, but I believe it's 27-8789 is the full kit from Toro. And usually they run about 25 bucks. So as you see the magnet there, as you might have noticed, all 3 of the carriage bolts fell through. They fall through and they land on the top of the impeller inside the bucket. And I'll show you what I'm doing here. So I've got a rubber band right there. I tied a knot in to make it tighter. If your rubber band's tight enough, you don't need to do that. And then basically you just use the magnet, fish the bolts through the hole, as you see here, hold it with a finger and just wrap the magnet around, or wrap the rubber band around, sorry. Once you get all 3, you can wiggle your fingers out of the rubber band and it will hold the bolts there well enough for you to put the bottom flange and the auger bearing and top flange on. I've seen guys do this with silicone. You can do it that way, it does work, but you have to let the silicone cure, and I just don't have time for that, so this is how I do it. There's a hole in the top flange, it points up from the factory. If you point it down or you get it wrong to the side, whatever, it doesn't really matter, but to make it look like it's from the factory, you point it up. There is a lip on the auger bearing itself that I just showed you that points up towards the pulley. And the only one of those that really matters is the lip on the auger bearing pointing up towards the pulley. Sometimes it goes on a little hard. I have had to tap them on before. Just be careful if you do, because that bronze sleeve is very soft, like right here. Just give it a little tappy tappy on the housing. Pop your bolts back through and get the nuts started. And it's fully okay to leave that rubber band in there when you tighten these down. It's not going to hurt anything. It mashes it into oblivion anyways. It won't get caught in the auger bearing, don't worry. I've done 1,000 of these. Yeah, it's not an issue. So get those tightened down. I did reuse these nuts. The customer didn't want to pay for new hardware. He only wanted done what needed to be done. You can reuse them once, maybe twice. But if the nylon looks really haggard, I would replace them. I have no idea what the thread pitch is, so don't ask. And you see here I'm just using my scrunch to apply a little pressure on the nut, which holds the carriage bolt up into place so that it doesn't spin, and you can get tension on it. That one's fighting me. Sometimes they fight you. Usually it's the last one because the flange is tight already, in which case you can just slide the flathead up under the nut itself. Give it a little spin, make sure everything spins. Put your washer back on. Get your flywheel set, or your flywheel keyway set in place, and just give it a little tappy tap into the thing. I like to leave it at an angle so it's in further on the top, and then that way the pulley slides down over it. But that's just me. Get the pulley started. Give it a whack with the handle of your hammer. You don't want to use like a hard hammer to smash on these pulleys because they're not hard steel, so they will dent and deform. If you deform the groove, you can have belt kicking issues or belt smoking issues later. Off frame, I think I'm grabbing my extension here. I can't remember. I recorded this over a year ago just to give you guys an idea how much I've been slacking on my page. But basically, it's all from here on out. It's all reverse of teardown. So we're just tightening up both set screws. Again, that's a 3/8 extension and a 3/8 wrench to turn it. Got that all tightened down. Now here, we got to take the belt guide off of the motor, which is 2 1/2-inch bolts, into the block. And this is the easiest way I've found to put them back together without taking out the belt idler pulley bracket and stuff like that. So you just remove the belt guide. Don't lose the washers. There's a regular washer and a lock washer on there. You don't want to lose those, because if you lose the lock washer, the bolt will wiggle out while you're running it and drop into the belly. I've never seen one mess anything up, but it's just a pain. So we're replacing the belt here. And then I just use a little metal like extension cord tie, I think is what they're originally for. And you put it on there and hold the belt onto the pulley tight, and then that way it'll pass the brake when you put it back together. So basically you line up the 2 center bolts in the slotted part of the body. So you get them there, and then you use that rod on the top as a guide to get it into the hole for adjusting the chute. Give it a pull and it'll all slide right together. And you got to hold it there in place. I've gotten really good at this, so I make it look easier than it actually is for somebody who's never done it before. But you hold it in place and adjust how far in or out it is it needs to be to get the bolts started on the top. Once they're started on the top, it's just a little bit of adjustment, tweaking to get them in on the bottom. So you can see I'm kind of giving it a little jerk there to move the hole around. Vision for bolts out of my pocket. I always wear a hoodie so I can store stuff in my front pocket. In the summertime it gets to be a little bit of a challenge, but if we're working on a snowblower, chances are it's not the summertime, so. It's always the bottom holes that give me the most trouble, especially on the big wheeled ones, because it's hard to get your hand in behind the big wheel. I've also seen guys, once they get the top bolt in, tip the snowblower up onto the bucket because they'll balance on the front of the bucket. I don't do that because gas usually leaks out of the carb and it leaks out of the cap, and who wants to breathe in gas fumes all day? But that's just me. There's several ways to do this. I'm just showing you the way that I choose to do it. Dude, homeboy needs to pull his pants up. There's a hole in my pocket, so I'm just collecting bolts that dropped out. And you want to get all 6 of these started. I mean, obviously the 2 center ones you don't have to start, but you want to get them all started and leave them loose before you go back and tighten them up. Because just because the top one's in, or the top and bottom one's in on the other side, doesn't mean that it hasn't flexed and the hole's not lined up. And if you try and wind it, you'll cross thread it. And if you do that, if you break a bolt off in these bodies, it's not the end of the world. I've seen ones that had, 1 or 2 bolts broken and they still held together as long as the last bolt in the center, or whatever bolts were left, were super tight. I obviously wouldn't leave one side of it unbolted. But in a pinch, if you break a bolt off, don't over stress about it. So here I'm taking the tie off of the belt, and with the belt loose, it's enough slack to pull it up over the pulley without an issue. So you just pop it over the pulley. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm turning the crank here to get it to slip over. And then we put our belt guide back on. Now really it's all smooth sailing from here. Don't tighten these bolts too tight. You just want them enough to squeeze down on that lock washer, because the block of the motor is aluminum and I have seen them stripped out before, and it's a pain to fix, and sometimes not worth fixing if you can, depending on the machine. So next I think we're going to put the shrouds back on, or we're going to do the cables. I can't remember. Appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. We're 18 minutes in. Most shops will charge an hour and a half or an hour for one of these jobs, and that's just kind of robbery. If your small engine mechanic is good and the pulley coming off the bucket doesn't fight him, this job shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes. I just put that cable in on the top. Basically, you just want to pull it so it's snug on the mechanism, but not enough so it's pulling the arm out of the mechanism, and then just tighten it down. Same thing up here, just put the top one in. I slide the arm over to hold it in place. And then I like to set these with the chute deflector all the way up. And then you put the handle on the stick shift on the dash where you want it to be for that position. And then just snug the cable up tight like that, like you see in the video. And it'll be perfect adjustment every time. Like I said earlier, these are 8mm or 5/16, either will work. I know somebody in the comments gonna go, well, what? One of them's the right size. Well, they'll both work. It's fine. You're overthinking it. Putting the covers back on. That big cover can be kind of a pain in the ass to put on sometimes. This one's no big deal. You just slide it behind the cable. I have seen guys tuck the cable into it, but that's not actually how it goes. So you just slide it in there. There's a little notch up under the chute that fits in the body. And you just kind of tighten that in place. And then this one can be the tricky one. I kind of start it at an angle so that that fin is going to pass by the chute and then just push. See right there, and then it'll drop down in place. I know it's a weird tight fit, but it will. You won't break it. I mean, you might break it, but I've never broken one. I've never seen somebody break one, so they're pretty durable. But yeah, that's it. I mean, that's all she wrote. If you guys like this video, I will be posting more content.